to the Aware Show presents Rising Stars. And a rising star is you. It's someone who has a message, a story to tell. Everyone has a story to tell, but a story that impacts people, impacts not only you when you tell it, but it impacts people who hear it and actually can change your life. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. I absolutely love this conversation because it changes our perspectives on things. From in the Western world, sometimes we take our freedoms for granted, especially when it comes to women. We've come a long way, but there are presupposed freedoms in the Western culture that are not the norm across the world for women. And for example, our ability to choose to marry or to walk around with our faces uncovered. These are freedoms that we are assuming they're always been our freedoms, but they're not the same for women across the world. And today I get to speak with a brilliant woman who's always been a freedom fighter. Born in Pakistan, Eram Saeed. She did not have these same types of freedoms in her native culture in Pakistan, where she was raised. She lived in a very beautiful, privileged life with a wonderfully loving set of parents in a wonderful household. And she was basically not given a choice of who to marry. She had a arranged marriage, but she chose this arranged marriage in a specific way that still meant freedom to her. And she sacrificed a lot to come to this country. And she really has pursued her incredible destiny of unity, of equality, of possibility for Muslim women and women from the Middle East who have come to the US. And she is an advocate for women all over the world. Welcome, Aram. You are just a fantastic lady.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. As I have been saying to you numerous times that I am having a fangirl moment every time I talk to you because I have been following your work for decades. Thank you for everything that you do.
Well, that means a lot to me, and I'm so grateful that in some way the interviews I've done can contribute to your experience because now you're paying it forward like I love people to do. You grew up in Pakistan, you had this desire, this independent streak about you, but yet you're listening to telesummits from the Aware Show and Jack Canfield. And tell me a little bit about your being raised or growing up.
Well, as you shared, Lisa, I was born in Pakistan, raised in Pakistan until the age of 21. I was born, as you said, to a wonderful, loving family. My parents were very loving. My mother, to this day, I say, may God rest her in peace, was one of the strongest people I have ever met. And I did not have any shortage of strong personalities around me because my dad was in the military, in the Pakistani military. He was a general.
Wow.
Uh, and I was surrounded, my uncles were generals as well. So I was surrounded by really, really strong personalities. And yet my mother, to this day, I say, was probably the strongest person I have ever come across. I had two siblings, both brothers. And it so happened that every time my dad was stationed for a different posting, uh, I was surrounded by male cousins. So I grew up with boys and I was a tomboy.
Is that where it came from? Because if you grew up in a military family with generals as your, adult figures, how did you get this streak of independence in you?
Well, my dad never really made me feel like I was any different from the boys. He was the man that I idealized, as every woman's first love is her dad.
Mhm.
So I knew from a very young age, Lisa, I remember I figured it out that I was probably smarter than most adults around me. And I had to negotiate a lot of things based on that. And then as I grew older, some of the things that I used to do with my friends, my cousins, I was no longer allowed to do because I was constantly being told, no, you can't do this because you're a girl. You can't do this because you're a girl. And that started to register that something was not right about being a girl. I couldn't have fun like my male counterparts were having. I remember when my mom told me I couldn't ride bikes anymore because, being a mom now myself, I can understand where she was coming from, right? And because young girls were not really, it wasn't the done thing. It wasn't considered right for young girls to be seen um, interacting with boys so much and being a tomboy. And it wasn't even perhaps safe for a young girl to be, riding her bike out in town when everybody's sleeping and stuff like that during the afternoons. So those kinds of messages started to register. And I could never make sense of it because I always was the kid who was asking why, but why not,
And this was
Probably.
really only 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean, this wasn't that long ago when
No,
you were pushing the
no.
boundaries like this. And yet you still ended up in a typical arranged marriage situation. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I had, when I got a little bit older in my teenage is when I basically really started the rebellion more and it got stronger because now I was getting messages even from religion. So my mom was a very devout Muslim and she would go to these gatherings where women got together and they discussed religion, Islam. And the message I kept hearing again and again was as if women were somehow inferior to men. And it
Mm.
didn't make sense to me because I remember one time in one of those lectures, the lady who was sharing the lecture said, um, women are inferior to men in many ways, especially in intellect. And I'm sitting there going, that's not true because
Oh,
I know I have always stood first in all of my classes. I have top marks. So I know most of the guys around me are, I used to say, dumb, you know? And I'm
a
like,
woman was saying this. A
yes.
woman was
Oh,
lecturing.
yes. Yes, yes. And that we must be obedient to the men, to the husbands, because of all these inferior traits that we have. And that men are rulers of women, and we must submit to that because that is God's decree. So all these messages that I was hearing, and I would ask questions, and majority of times they would not have any answers, and they would just say, "Well, if you have to fight, then fight with God, because this is God's decree." And I'd be like, "Well, how do I fight with God? What do I do to, get my complaint registered with God? Because I don't think this is fair, and it's also not true." So I started to rebel against Islam at a very early age. And what I learned was because as I said, my mom was a very strong personality. So there were a lot of things you didn't say to mom, and I didn't. So I became passive aggressive. And
Ah.
when it was time for me to get married, I delayed as much as I could because I wanted to pursue higher studies. I wanted to first do a genetic engineering degree, which I was told in no, unceremonious tones that no, you can't.
Mhm.
Then I said, okay, well, how about MBA? I really wanted to do MBA. And my mom said, nope, there is no way. And I remember she was saying to my dad, because my dad was trying to advocate for me, and she said, if we let her pursue a professional degree, do you see how rebellious she already is? If she pursues and secures a professional degree, she is never going to be able to maintain a marriage, which
Right. Right.
unfortunately.
Didn't your mom say at one point that she was worried that you wouldn't be a good cook for your in-laws or something like that?
Yes, that I heard that all the time. I was a spoiled army brat. I did not want to learn how to cook. I did not clean. I didn't do any of those things. And it was like my mom's life purpose was to train me to be a good future wife for someone. And
I
I
can see that.
refused.
I can understand that as a mother too. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying, that she
yeah,
was trying to protect her daughter of the
exactly.
societal norms. Otherwise, you're challenging a major religious tradition contextually that is thousands of years old. That is dangerous.
So what I discovered was, and we'll talk about it later, that it wasn't actually the religious tradition. It was the cultural tradition, which majority of people accept as religious tradition. So that is why, because I couldn't tell the difference, I rebelled against Islam. I rebelled, like I shared with you at the age of 18. I declared to God, I hate you and I'm never going to love you. You're pretty narcissistic and you're unfair. So, yeah, I was rebelling all the way. Um, when I got married, Lisa, so the way things still were, and in many parts of Pakistan, they're still like this, that when a girl comes of age, she receives proposals from different suitors. And my family was progressive in the sense that I was allowed to say no to the ones I didn't like.
Okay.
So I was allowed to also say yes if I wanted to someone, which I never said yes. I kept saying no for years. And then one time there was this proposal from Austin, Texas, and my ears perked up because UT Austin. So
Uh-huh.
So I said if I could be given the permission to speak to the gentleman, because you have to understand there's no dating allowed, not in those days. No dating, there was no concept of dating. I was able to meet with him with the whole family. They came over for tea, and my family was there, his family was there, and we met, basically just said, hello, how are you?
Wait, can you share with me how do the proposals come in?
They are usually through friends and extended family.
Okay.
This is the done thing in those cultures in India and Pakistan. They see a single woman, a single man. It's like connect them. So
Okay. Got the
yeah,
families really want to connect them. Got it.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's through it was through one of my mom's friends that
And
this
you have no idea who these people are or what they look like or their backgrounds, or do you?
typically you don't, but the family does get involved. If something becomes serious, then they will do, some checking and background checking and stuff like that. In
Okay.
this case, I mean, he was from a great family. We just didn't know because he lived in Austin and, a lot was just not known. And I was only 21. I had been raised very sheltered. I couldn't even go to the grocery store, Lisa, without being chaperoned. And I used to have a bodyguard with me all the time because there had been a couple of attempts, kidnapping attempts on me. So I had to be with the bodyguard all the time.
Because
So,
of your father in the military as a general.
yes, and he was on a very sensitive position. So, yeah, so when I saw this proposal, I just thought, you know what? This is my chance to escape. And I requested my parents if I could talk to him. And so I talked to him on the phone. I think it was maybe a 30-minute conversation. And I requested him that if we get married, would it be possible for me to pursue my MBA? And he said, sure, why not? So for me, that was like, yay,
Yeah.
that's it. I got
Yeah.
my wish. And that's how I got married, moved to the United States in 1994. And
Wow. Wow.
yeah, unfortunately, it turned out to be an abusive marriage. He turned out to be an alcoholic. And yeah,
Did you have the support of your family when that happened?
I didn't tell them, Lisa, because my mom by that time had been diagnosed with liver cirrhosis. She had hepatitis B, and the doctors had told her that she had perhaps 6 months to live.
Oh,
And fortunately, we were very blessed. She did her holistic treatments and she actually lived for 25 years. But at that time in 1994, it was always like a sword hanging over my head that my mom can die at any time. And my mom really, really loved me very much. I was the only daughter, and so I just didn't want to cause her pain. And the other thing, Lisa, I think when you talk to domestic violence victims, one of the things you realize is that many of them, especially if they have not seen abuse before, they don't even know what's happening to them. I was speaking at an event last week and I spoke about the first incident of abuse, which is still the most painful one for me. And they said, I want to know what you were going through at that time. Were you asking yourself, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? And I said, no, no, I actually didn't ask that. What I was asking was, what is happening to me? What
mm.
is this? Because you can't make sense of it. And we're talking about 1994. We didn't really have the internet like we do
The
now.
awareness. But
Yeah.
that is very true. It's a secret. And also between the couple, it's
Mhm.
an unspoken thing. This event happened, but nobody speaks about it. afterwards,
No,
right?
exactly. And they also tell you that it's your fault.
Right.
And because I was raised with this notion that somehow I'm not going to be accepted by my in-laws because I wasn't good at cooking and I wasn't good at this. So I was trying to make sense of things that maybe if I could just be a better wife, maybe if I could cook better, maybe if I could clean better, then he would be happy with me. So I tried all of that for 8 years, not realizing that this was actually abuse.
And I can understand that because you were taught women were inferior and not as bold or brave or strong or smart as men. So you were had that programming, subconscious programming ingrained in you culturally.
Yes.
And you were trying, now you had a child in that relationship, right? So you also had a daughter to protect.
Yes, and raising her became the central focal focus of my life. She was the source of joy for me, and she was really really cute. She had these ringlets, curly hair like yours, and so I would just my whole day was about what is the first outfit that I'm gonna dress
Mm.
her up in, and then what am I gonna do in the evening, and how do I feed her, and how do I play with her. It was all about me raising my daughter. She was literally the joy of my life. And it was at age, she was about 4. And so at that stage, I'm thinking, Natasha is going to be, she's going to grow up to be this strong, powerful woman, and everything that I wasn't able to do, she's going to do. She's going to get the education she wants. She's going to be able to pursue the career she wants. And I still remember I was in the kitchen and I didn't allow Natasha to consume sugars. So she wasn't allowed to have soda. And her dad was drinking a Diet Coke. And she asked in her baby voice, in her toddler voice, Daddy, can I have Coke? And he said, No, baby, you can't. And she asked again, Why not? And she said, Because mommy says no. And then she asked, Why does mommy say no? And he said, Because mommy's a bitch. And am I allowed to say that on the show? I'm sorry.
Well, we'll figure it out. Yeah, it's fine. It's
Okay.
fine.
Um, yeah, so and I was standing on the top of the stairs and he was drunk, of course, but it hit me so hard in that moment, Lisa, because up until that point, I had been justifying the abuse and the bad marriage and keeping it quiet. I had not told a single person in the world what I was going through. And all the justifications were now around, I can't do this to Natasha. I don't want to put her through a divorce. I don't want her to be raised in a broken home. All of those things. And in that moment, it became crystal clear to me that the reason why I was staying in this marriage was because I'm a coward, that I was being a coward and I didn't have the courage to protect my daughter, and that my dearest princess Natasha is going to, if I stay in this marriage, she's going to grow up and she's going to put up with a man's abuse because that's what she saw her mother do, because no amount of education that I give her and what I tell her, it doesn't matter because she's going to do whatever she saw her mother do. And so a few months later was my 30th birthday and I filed for divorce.
Ugh. Was this the first time that you really felt you could use your voice?
Yes, and it was also the first time that I began to realize that what I had been suffering through was abuse because
Mm.
I hadn't spoken about it. So I had to tell my parents, who supported me immediately. They were shocked that that I had hidden it so well, and that why would I not tell them about this? To this day, I wonder, I do understand because I, of course, since then have counseled a lot of domestic violence victims as well. The shame that the abuse victim feels is not something that you can logically make sense of, but there is a lot of shame, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear because you do have an attachment to the abuser. Your survival depends upon them. They make sure of that. So breaking away from that is also terrifying. And you have to remember, I was a homemaker without a college degree in the US, and my husband was quite wealthy, but I wasn't on my own, right? I didn't know what I was going to do, what kind
So
of a job.
what did you do? So you're now divorced, you have no income. How did you pick yourself up? You're living in the US, your family's in Pakistan. What
Mhm.
did you do?
Um, so my mom came over to support me, and she would be here on a visit visa for 6 months, and then we would extend it. So she would, at any given time, she was able to stay maybe 6 months to a year with me just to help me support my daughter. Um, in the beginning, my dad helped me financially to, get settled to pay my monthly bills. And I just started applying for jobs everywhere. I was willing to do anything, any kind of job, because I frankly had no experience, so I didn't even know what I could do. And I would say I had this can-do attitude. If somebody, said, go here for a job interview, I would go there and I would try to work. And in these things, one of the things that happened, somebody introduced me to their loan officer who worked for Chase Mortgage, who said, we are looking for to hire someone in the emerging markets division. So somebody from your community, if you know anyone. And he said, I know this woman. She's newly divorced, but she's really smart. She doesn't have any experience, but she's really smart. And if you hire her, then I will give you my loan, his refinance.
Oh my goodness, you had a Hail Mary there.
I
Yes.
had an angel to help me. And so I interviewed, and the loan officer, I still remember his name was Andy Berry. He was a seasoned senior loan officer, a good, Christian man who just felt for me that, she's a single mom, she's desperate. And he said, look, we never hire anybody without prior experience in mortgages. And I did not even know how to spell mortgage, Lisa. I was
But
totally
you
green.
had graduated from college, you have a degree. So
But
that's
it wasn't, it's not recognized as a college degree in America because it was from Pakistan.
oh, okay. So you didn't end up going to you
No, I
you
did not go to college here. No,
okay,
no.
gotcha, gotcha.
So, yeah, so that MBA that I wanted to do never happened. So,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
yeah, so I
It's a
got
false
hired.
promise. Okay.
Yeah, I got hired for Chase. And I remember that for the first 6 months, I made no money because I just had no idea. How do you book a loan? I still remember talking to someone like, what is this second lien? I didn't understand what that meant. I was a quick study though. So on my birthday, again, it was on my birthday, and I basically said, there's no way I'm going to be able to make money with this. So I resigned. I went to the manager and I turned in my resignation. It was her first day at the job. And she said,
Ah,
well, I'm not going to let you jinx it this way, that you're going to resign on the day that it's my first day. So how about I give you a couple of hours every day after work, and I will train you myself. And then if you're still not able to generate business and close loans, then you can quit. So her name was Laura Sloat. And I'm so grateful for all the help that I got. So she would stay after hours. I think she trained me for a month, and then
wow.
yeah, that was in July. So in August, I booked as many loans as I could. In October, I was the highest producing loan officer for that branch.
Fantastic story. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you had a lot of great determination. You used your voice and you got a start by doing that. And at what point did you start to take responsibility for who you were and what you were attracting? How did that aid in your healing?
Well, it wouldn't happen for a few more years because this was just the story of my first marriage and the escape from that. I remarried a year after my divorce, another Pakistani gentleman, and hoping that this was going to be my fairy tale that I had been denied before. That marriage also turned out to be abusive. And it actually ended in physical violence and him getting convicted for that. But that marriage also took 7 years. In the meantime, I had my second daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing again. I eventually left because I could not raise my daughters in an abusive environment. And it was during that process. Now I had been a lender for almost a decade by then. I had become used to making good money. So I had that self-confidence in myself now.
That's great.
Yeah. However, in 2008, 2009, all the banking industry went belly
Right.
up.
Right.
So my
Right.
career, by this time, I was a commercial lender. Everything just came to a sudden screeching halt. I had to file bankruptcy. And I had the divorce case, custody case, the abuse case, and bankruptcy all going on at the same time. And my divorce lawyers also sued me for lack of payment. So in most of these cases, I was not represented by an attorney because I didn't have any money and I had to represent myself. So it was probably one of the hardest periods that I have gone through because it seemed like the whole world is attacking me and I have two daughters to take care of, but no money. And I just could not see the way forward.
That has had to have been the darkest time in your life. And just listening to you is extraordinary for anybody who has any excuses in their life. You went beyond every limitation. You just kept going, even at your darkest moment.
Yeah, and please don't get me wrong, Lisa. There were times when I was not going to do anything anymore. I gave up so many times. I would I had started to kind of recreate my some semblance of a relationship with God, and I would just get mad at him like, are you punishing me for what I said as a teenager? Like, enough is enough. This is just too much. That's when I discovered the telesummits. That's when I discovered you. Um, I remember one day I picked up this book by Deborah Ford, Spiritual
Mhm.
Divorce. And that was my first, I would say, shift where I started to see myself not just as this victim who had things that had been happening to her, but really, because she said something like, have you been running a pattern in your life? Notice if things keep happening to you and there's similar events, and then find the most common denominator, and that's usually going to be you. And that was true. So up until that point, the story in my head was, I don't know why this happens to me. I'm a good person. And then these men abuse me and I'm a victim. And
Mm,
then I had to sit down and say, wow, I have been attracting this in my life. I am a factor. I show up in all of these situations. So I have to take responsibility, which is different from blaming yourself. It's like
right.
saying, if I have the power to create this nonsense in my life, then I also have the power to create the opposite. So how do I do that? That question became this all-encompassing question. And that's why I would listen to telesummits. And so the telesummits in those days were like this beautiful, amazing world of possibilities filled
Yeah.
with positive messages. And I would literally listen to telesummits for 4 to 5 hours a day. I mean, I didn't have a job. It wasn't like
Mhm.
I was doing anything. And I just was feeding my brain with all these positive messages of hope until I actually really believed it that, I'm about to recreate my life. And I did.
That is an incredible story because you had every reason not to. But the turning point was where you realized the unconscious patterns were sabotaging your life, that you became the observer of those patterns, and that you actually realized through the help of these outside sources of the summits that you could redefine your destiny, that you were in charge. And if you were power enough to create it one way, you could be powerful enough to create it the other way. And
Absolutely.
you did that. Is that, would you give that message to Muslim women coming to the US? Would you tell them that?
I would absolutely tell them that, and I would also combine it with the spiritual message of Islam, which was also very, very helpful for me because at that time I was introduced to a Sufi teacher who also started to change my viewpoint about how Islam saw women and how God was not this narcissistic being always watchful that, you make a mistake, I'm going to catch you and punish you, but rather God was this extremely merciful, loving companion who is with you all the time, ready to help you. And so I'm getting all these positive messages. I'm also getting messages about how to connect with God and how to really have that faith that I am going to be okay. And I have always been okay. And I remember this one day, Lisa, as all these messages are in my head, and I'm thinking that, okay, so if anything is possible, and I believe that, then why did I go through what I went through? And this answer popped up. It's like, because it's going to make your story very interesting. And
And
I
you're going
li
to help a lot of people.
well, and I realized that the story is being written. It's not done yet. It's like, the hero's journey. It becomes most interesting when the hero actually faces a lot of adversity and then they make it through. That's what makes it interesting. So it was like God was joking with me. I'm just making your story interesting. And
The innermost cave. Yes, I'm making your
yeah,
innermost cave experience. Yes. Yeah.
exactly. And so one of those days, there was an email that landed in my inbox by one of the telesummit hosts that I used to listen to, inviting people to join this course that he was going to teach on how to launch summits and how to run it as a business. And I thought, oh my God, all these wonderful people that I idealize, that I look up to, I can do this as a business. I already do it 4 or 5 hours a day. I get to interact with them. I get to learn from them. I get to buy their course. I get to actually get access to their courses for free. And what a life it would be. And I'll be helping spread these positive messages. I'll be helping to impact the lives of so many people. So when he told me the cost of the course, I was dismayed because it literally was like my bottom dollar. And you've run this, you know this, Lisa. I had 1 month. That's it. Because if I put in the money into that course, then I would not have any money left for household expenses. Both the girls were gone for visitation. It was June of 2000 and May of 2012. And I told him I have to launch this summit within a month. And he said, I don't know anyone who has launched in less than 6 months. And even then, I don't know if you're going to be profitable. So he wasn't comfortable selling me the course. And I said, I will write this down for you. If you open up the whole course, entire course, I will never ask for a refund. And then, this is not on you, it's on me. I literally lived and breathed and slept and woke up with that course. I launched 30 days later, which was mid-June, about 15th of June 2012. Within 1 year, my summit crossed $1 million in revenues.
Oh my goodness. And it was, again, was it for you to educate women that of all kind, or what was the theme of the summit?
The summit was called From Heartache to Joy because that
Ah,
was what I was going through. And
mhm.
for almost 10 years, we didn't change the name. It remained From Heartache to Joy.
Wow.
It ended up being more focused on energy healing and spirituality and all these messages of, healing and positivity and you being a co-creator in how life unfolds. And it is still going on. It is now called the Life Reawakened Show.
Mhm.
And I'm very blessed that my right hand people, Gretchen and Nyla, actually run the summit now. I have stepped away as of this year to focus more on my brand that serves the Muslim women.
Yes. How many Muslim women do you believe are living in the US?
Um, in the US, there are about 4.5 to maybe 5 million Muslims, so half of that would be women. In Canada, I would say maybe half of that. In By 2030, it is expected to double.
Okay. So there are millions that
Yes.
have the need for some type of empowerment message that might be in your similar situation of newly divorced, learning to have their voice for the first time in their life and being okay with it. Now, you said something really important earlier. I want to break down is the difference between the cultural assumptions and the
Yes.
actual religious context. What do you mean by that?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That is what drives me. That is my passion because the abject hurt that I felt at the hands of, people that were from my religion when I was told as a little girl, you're not good enough, you're inferior. There is trauma there. And it took me years to actually figure out that it was not Islam doing that to me. It was a very recent patriarchal interpretation of Islam, which is the prevailing interpretation, unfortunately, but it is recent. As I was sharing with you earlier, almost 1500 years ago, the message that Islam brought was radical. And it was not radical because it was monotheistic. I mean, we already had Judaism, we had Christianity there, two Abrahamic religions were already there. It was radical because for the first time in the history of mankind, in no uncertain terms, Quran declared, the Prophet Muhammad declared through the Quran that women are the equal of men. Women have autonomy. Women have agency. It is their right to pursue their life the way they want to. They do not have to be obedient wives. Women are obedient to God, just like men are obedient to God. Their obedience only belongs to God. So it was as if it was, when I discovered all this, I was shocked because that's not what I was raised with. And I started to dig deeper and deeper, and I realized that it's only in the last 100 years or so that this patriarchal interpretation, which is a politicized interpretation, has taken over the world. And a lot of Muslim majority countries don't even realize that this is actually not the correct interpretation. Now, there are many scholars who are raising their voices, and they have always talked
Mm.
about this. So I'm not the only one. But this now has become my mission because, first of all, you have a woman who is facing abuse in her marriage, who is constantly being told, you have to put up with this abuse because I'm your husband. It's my right to do this to you. It's my right to beat you because Quran says I'm allowed to beat you. Imagine what that feels like, Lisa.
Ah,
Especially, and Quran does not say that,
does
by the
not
way.
say that. Yeah, it
No,
does not say that.
Quran does not say that. But majority of these scholars will uphold those translations. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
imagine if you are a young Muslim girl who is a second generation immigrant. You're raised in the West, you're raised in America or Canada or some other Western countries. You're going to college here, you're going to school here, and you are bright and you have a professional degree, you're successful in your career, and so you are successful by all means, except when you go home or when you're with your community and then you're told, no, 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 but make sure you're an obedient wife when you get married or if you're already married. And if you're not married, then something is wrong with you because you're now, 28 or 30 or whatever. So you're a failure. So I find that there's a lot of disconnect and dissonance and confusion among the young American or Canadian Muslim girls who were born and raised here. So there's a complete disconnect between their identity as a good Muslim woman and their identity as a woman who has dreams and passions that she wants to pursue
As a human being.
as a human being. And there's so much, there's value. She can be a valuable member of the society, but she's told, no, but Islam, Allah, God doesn't value that in you. God only values whether you're a good wife and a good mother. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is actually incumbent upon each and every Muslim, first of all, to pursue knowledge to the best of their ability. And number two, to also use their talents and abilities that God has given them in a meaningful, useful way, which is sometimes to earn money, sometimes it's social work, whatever you want to do. But you are
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be a meaningful, useful member of the society, whether you're a man or a woman.
Okay, so you are, as I said earlier, challenging major patriarchal
Yes.
concepts of religion. Do you get pushback on this? Do you get feedback just as, the Catholic faith is going through the same thing and it was patriarchal and it changed when the meaning and the sacred geometry is showing the truth. I mean, we hear this all of, what level of pushback have you received on this?
Extreme. I get a lot of hatred, vitriol. I get a lot of, death threats sometimes, not all the time.
Wow.
Because as you can see, I don't cover myself. So that's another really big point of contention with these people. Although I have created videos with female Muslim scholars who go into the history of hijab and how actually it is not mandatory, although majority of the Muslim world believes it is. Again, this is a new development about 100 years ago, wasn't there before. So,
Oh, I'd love to see those videos. That's
oh,
fascinating.
I'll share them with you. I just put one up yesterday and they're all in English. So I had this panel discussion with two female scholars and we are reading and interpreting this one verse from the Quran, which is 434, one of the most contentious verses in the Quran, which actually has been translated as to say that men are rulers of women and that she must be an obedient wife and that the husband has the right to beat his wife in order to discipline her. So we engaged with the verse and we did word by word translations and what this means and what that means and how none of the prevailing translations are actually correct. And we're not the only ones saying it.
Is this on the jamali.love website or
It's
is this
on my YouTube channel right now.
YouTube channel under Aram Saeed?
Yes, I will
Okay.
share the link with you because this has never been done that, or at least not that I know of, that one of the most contentious verses has been taken up by women, two of whom are actually scholars. All three of them are not wearing a veil. We're not covering our hair. We can. It's just that we want to make a statement because it's not mandatory, then why should we succumb to the pressure, put on us by the expectations of the culture? So, yeah, so we engage with the verse, we engage with the Quran and we interpret it. And these are really strong women. So they're not really trying to say things that quote unquote would appease the West, right? That's what we
Right.
blamed for. You're just saying all this because you want to appease the West. You're apologetic Muslims. So we're not doing that. We're really diving in really deep and coming up with understandings that are just amazing. Um,
What is the purpose of doing something like that? Right. You're not there to appease the Western woman. You're not there to try to make people understand. What is your purpose with doing a video like that?
twofold. Twofold. Thank you for asking that, Lisa. The first most important purpose is for young Muslim girls to understand their own religion, that whatever you're hearing, because there is almost like this mafia of scholars that belong to a certain understanding. It is the patriarchal interpretation where women are objectified, where women are controlled, women are oppressed. It suits them to
Keep
uphold
that,
that.
of course, of course.
But however, there is an alternative understanding because a lot of these younger women who are bold, who know how to do critical thinking, are secretly disenchanted with Islam and leaving Islam, or they're just traumatized within Islam. So my goal is to help them understand that Islam is very empowering for women. I say this often to my Western friends that, when you see women oppressed, the biggest mistake you can make regarding Muslim women is to think we want to be rescued from Islam. Nothing could be further from the truth. We love
Okay.
Islam, and Islam is very empowering for women. So that's number one. Number two, I do want to build bridges. I do want, for example, for someone like you to be able to understand someone like me. We have so many similarities. I mean, Lisa, when I talk about oppression of Muslim women, yes, in some cases it is extreme, but none of it is new for women. I mean, women everywhere have suffered from
Everywhere. Yes,
women
yes.
everywhere have been objectified and oppressed, and in some ways we're still going through that. And women, my best allies before I found these female Muslim scholars, my strongest, staunchest, most loving allies were women like yourself, right? Who are transformational leaders, not necessarily from my faith, but from the self-development space, spirituality space, and the sisterhood that nourished me, that gave me the energy to continue. And the light bulb went off and I'm like, that's it. Women are going to change the world, but first the Western woman is going to give a hand, a helping hand to her sister in the East, because we're talking about almost 1 billion humans on the planet. We cannot change the world if a billion of us are still oppressed. So the Western woman is going to lend a helping hand to her sister in the East. And yes, together we're going to rise and we're going to change the world. It's as simple as that.
That is quite a phenomenal feat that you are that and purpose that you have created and leaned into. And that is why I wanted to interview you because I wanted you to say and have your voice be heard that this is your purpose. Your purpose is to unite
Mhm.
these freedoms that we as Western women have come to completely take for granted and
Yeah.
to understand, and I'd love to know more about why women originally, the context of why the hijab was worn and what the reason originally was for that, because I've heard a lot of different controversies as a Western woman
Yes, of course.
about that as well. And I know there's a movement to take that off. I know that those women have been very, very brutally vandalized for doing that. So I don't want it to promote danger for
Yeah.
anyone.
Hmm.
So I just want to make sure that all we're having here is we're having a conversation about awareness. And awareness
Exactly.
is the name of my show. It's about being aware. And that is what you're doing here. And I so appreciate your
Yes.
perspectives, your purpose, your concepts.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. And, I just want to say here that I support the right of the woman to decide if she wants to cover or not. So I always say to them, I will fight alongside you for that right. Just don't force your opinions on someone else. And I'll be happy to share those videos with you as well. I know there's a lot of curiosity about Muslim women. They're mysterious. There's all this like, how can they accept the burqa? And it's so disempowering. But actually, a lot of very empowered, strong women do they cover their face and they cover their hair, and they are very outspoken. So it would be a
Because they
mistake.
believe in that part of the Quran about Allah's
Yes.
message, right?
They believe that interpretation of the
Hmm.
Quran. Yes, all the
And that
power.
is their right.
That is their right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah.
And
So
they're
I'll be happy to
traditional
share.
women and they're fine with that, although they still maintain maybe there's a traditional woman who has maintained her intelligence and her degrees, like these scholars that you're speaking of, and some of them wear the hijab and some of them do not, right?
Well, and I would say I considered it for a while, not because I thought it was, a decree in the Quran, but hijab does empower you in many ways. For example, it is a very clear message to the society. I will not be objectified based on my beauty. I am willingly taking this, which I know is going to reduce my attractiveness. I'm going to wear that because I'm saying no to the opposite sex or anybody else objectifying me. And I can tell you, because some of people in my family do take hijab. uh it is so liberating too, because you never have to worry about making your hair. You never have to worry about having a bad hair day, right? So
Yes.
it has its benefits. Very nuanced, let's say that. It's a very nuanced discussion. It's
It
not
must
one
be.
thing.
What a
Yeah.
fascinating, brave discussion to have in an open forum such as YouTube. And the comments are overwhelmingly positive on your YouTube channel and your videos. And just a couple of people saying, you know, please adhere to the messages. And so that is a beautiful way for you to present the information as objective as possible, but allowing people to determine their own truth. And that is what I've always done on the Aware Show. And I say it at the end of every show, always listen to your own truth. And you have listened to your own truth, Iram. You have listened to your own belief, and your goal is to carry that torch forward and to pass it on to our younger generation. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything that you've done for women. Thank you for being so brave to be here and speak your truth. You're an incredible example of what it means to not only have your voice heard, but not be afraid to have your voice heard. So thank you
Mm.
for that example. Those are two different things. Speaking up is one thing. Being terrified of speaking up is another.
Yeah, and And it's not that I don't feel the terror.
Of
I do
course.
at times, and it's there, it's real. And I just want to thank you, Lisa, for again, for all the amazing work that you have been doing for as long as I have known you, when you weren't even aware of my existence. Please know that it impacts people. It definitely impacted me and helped to change my life, because when we are so down and we are so hopeless, people like you show up. And just by being who you are the permission that people like me need, right? Like, oh, wow, if she's saying all this and if she can be all this, then I have the permission to hope and dream as well. And maybe I can get there too one day. And it's a dream come true for me to be interviewed by you and
What
sharing
a
this
what a full
beautiful
circle
thing.
moment because I don't know. We spend countless hours broadcasting on public television and public radio, and we don't know where it lands. We just pray that we do. And
Yes,
it landed on you. And for you to
it
come
did.
back to me at that this time is just I can't even express the gratitude. Thank
Mm,
you. Thank
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Yes.
right. Much love, Aram. I could speak with
You
you
as
forever,
well.
but I will. All right. And
Lots of
for
love.
everyone listening, thank you so much for being a part of this. You are a rising star as well. I always invite you to listen to your own truth. And I'm Lisa Garr. And until next time, I invite you to stay aware.